Welcome to Old Celtic Tales by E.M. Wilmot Buxton. Please like, share, and follow us.
Part 2 of The Quest of the Seven Champions. How the Seven Champions found Olwen of the White Footprints onward, and onward rode Kilhugh and the 6 knights until they came at length to a vast plain, stretching in every direction farther than the eye could reach. Over it they rode, and at length perceived through the misty air the towers and battlements of a great castle, far away on the borders of the moorland. They rode towards this castle all day long, but yet they never seemed to get any nearer. All the next day they went on riding, and still the castle seemed as far away as ever. The third evening brought them no nearer. At length Sir Gawain exclaimed, "This must be Fleeting Castle, which can always be seen from a distance, but can never be actually reached." Now, on the 4th day, to their surprise, the castle no longer advanced before them as they approached, and soon they were able to draw rein before it, and to wonder in amazement at the thousands of sheep which fed upon the plains surrounding its massive walls. Nearby sat the shepherd with his dog tending this enormous flock. The shepherd was a giant in size and was dressed in the skins of wild beasts. The dog was larger than a full-grown horse. He had the shaggiest of coats, and, though an excellent sheepdog, was destructive enough elsewhere, for with his fiery breath he would burn up all the dry bushes and dead trees in that region. The champions looked somewhat doubtfully at this great animal, and Kai suggested to Uriel that as he knew all tongues, he had better go and speak to the shepherd. "Not I," answered Uriel. "I agreed when we set out to go just as far as thou, and no farther." But Merlin came to them and explained that he had cast a spell over the dog so that he could not hurt them. So Kilhugh and Kai and Uriel went together to the shepherd and asked him very politely who owned that countless flock of sheep and who lived in yonder castle. "Where have ye lived not to know that?" cried the shepherd. "Everyone in the world ought to know that this is the castle of Thornogre Thistlehair, chief of the giants." "And who art thou?" they asked. "I am Constantine, the brother of Thorn-Ogre Thistlehair," replied the man with an angry look. "A fine brother indeed has he been to me. He has taken from me all my lands and possessions, and now I am obliged to earn a living by feeding his sheep." Then he asked them why they came, and when they replied that they were seeking for Olwen, daughter of Thornogre Thistlehair, he sadly shook his head. "Alas," he said, "no one ever tried to find her and returned from this place alive. Go back at once, lest ye all perish also." "That will we never do," cried Kilhugh, and the champions echoed his words. Then Constantine inquired who Kilhugh was, and when he heard, he cried out that he was his own nephew, and begged that he and his comrades would spend a night at his house, and to this they readily agreed. And as a mark of affection, Kilhugh gave his uncle a golden ring, but it was much too small for the giant, who put it forthwith into the finger of one of the gloves which hung from his belt as a sign of his rank as chieftain. Then he signaled to his dog, who immediately began to drive the sheep towards home. When they reached the house, the giant entered first, and gave his wife his gloves to hold. She soon pulled out the ring, and at once began to question him about it. So he told her that their nephew Kilhugh, with 6 comrades, was even then dismounting at the door. Then the shepherd's wife was glad, and ran forth with hands outstretched to clasp him in her arms. But so big and strong was she that, as Kai quickly saw, no knight could survive her embrace. So as she threw her arms round Kilhugh's neck, he snatched up a log of firewood and pushed it into her arms instead of the young prince, and when she unloosed it, it was twisted out of all shape. It was somewhat to their relief, therefore, when she took them into the house without further embracing, and set them down to supper. This was a very frugal meal, and served with great simplicity, for Thornogre had not left his brother so much as a silver goblet or a single chair in his barren hall. When they had supped, the shepherd's wife asked Kai and Uriel to stay behind after the rest had gone out to the courtyard, and taking them to the chimney corner, she opened a great stone box. As she lifted the lid, to their amazement, a beautiful boy with golden curly hair rose up from within. "Pity indeed," exclaimed Uriel, "to keep so handsome a child shut up here. What hath he done?" Then the lady wept and answered, "All my 23 sons have been killed by Thornogre Thistlehair, chief of the giants, and now my only hope of keeping him alive is to hide him in this chest, where he has lived ever since he was born." And she wept to think that her boy would never have a chance of doing valiant deeds and of becoming a great knight. Then Kai bade her be of good cheer and let the lad come with them, promising that he should not be slain unless he, Kai, were killed as well. She agreed to this very gladly, and asked them why they had come to that region. But when she knew they had come to seek for Olwen, she advised them strongly to go home, since in that very quest all her 23 sons had perished. They laughed at her fears, however, and asked if the maiden ever came to the shepherd's house. "Yes," said the shepherd's wife. "She comes every Saturday to wash her hair. She leaves behind her all her jewels and rings in the water which she uses, and never asks for them again." Then they begged her to ask fair Olwen to visit her at once, and she agreed, on condition that they would not carry her off against her will. To this the champions agreed, and sat waiting in a hall for the coming of the maiden. Very fair she looked as she approached, dressed in a robe of flame-colored silk, and wearing a jeweled collar of gold round her neck. More yellow was her hair than the flower of the broom, and her skin was whiter than the foam of the wave, and fairer were her hands and fingers than the blossoms of the wood anemone amidst the spray of the meadow fountain. The eye of the trained hawk, the glance of the falcon were not brighter than hers. Her bosom was more snowy than the breast of the white swan, her cheek was redder than the reddest roses. Whoso beheld her was filled with love of her. 4 white trefoils sprang up wherever she trod. Therefore was she called Olwen of the White Footprints. Having entered the house, she sat down by Kilhugh, who at once loved her greatly, and began to pray her to come away with him and be his wife. But Olwen, though she returned his affection, answered that she had promised her father not to go away without his leave. She also told him that Thornogray knew that her bridal day was fated to be the day of his death, so that he would withhold his leave as long as possible. She advised him, however, to go to her father, and to grant him everything he demanded, and so in time he should win her hand. But if he denied the giant's least request, he would lose both her and his own life. When she had said this, she returned to the castle. That's the end of this story, brought to you by Shaffer Media Enterprises. Please check back for more exciting stories.
The Ultimate Question is a fully acted and produced audio fantasy story. When a young boy is found on a battlefield, it sets into motion a series of events that will have potentially catastrophic results unless that young boy, now a young man, can solve the puzzle that his mentor left him before he died. The Ultimate Question is available wherever you find podcasts and audiobooks. Visit uqstory.com for more information.
Independent short films are a welcome change from corporate entertainment. These films often press the boundaries of filmmaking, giving you a visual and intellectual experience that you can't get in mainstream stuff. The best place to find short independent films is Appealing TV, available on Roku and Amazon Fire. Find out more at appealingtv.com.
Please visit ShafferMediaEnterprises.com for more of our projects and services.